Many thousands of years ago, there were no cities on Earth. There were no kings, no armies, and no towering palaces. Everywhere there were only vast forests, rivers, mountains, and endless grasslands stretching toward a horizon no one had ever mapped. People lived in small tribes, each consisting of perhaps 20 to 40 individuals. They hunted together, gathered food together, slept under the same open sky, and each other was their entire world. There was no writing, no history books, no way to remember the past except through stories passed from an elder's mouth to a child's ear. Let us call one such tribe the Forest Tribe. Among them lived a young hunter named Aruk. Since childhood, he had learned that every sound in the forest carried meaning. A snapping twig could mean a deer, or it could mean danger. The scent of the wind could tell whether prey was nearby. Human footprints could reveal whether those ahead were friends, or something far more dangerous. Aruk's father had taught him to read the forest the way later humans would learn to read words on a page. To survive out here, you did not need strength alone. You needed to notice everything and trust almost nothing. One morning, Aruk and several companions went to the river in search of water. The morning was quiet, the kind of quiet the forest wore just before something changed. Suddenly, they noticed unfamiliar footprints pressed into the mud. They did not belong to anyone from their tribe. The prints were fresh. Whoever had made them had been here only hours ago. Everyone stopped. No one spoke. An elder slowly knelt down, placed his hand on the ground, and said, "They cannot be very far away." The entire tribe hurried back to their camp. The fire was extinguished so that no smoke would reveal their location. The children were kept close to their mothers. The men stood guard with spears in their hands, eyes fixed on the tree line. That day, no one went out to hunt, because they knew that the most dangerous creature in this forest was not a lion, not a wolf, not even a flood. It was another group of humans. 2 days later, smoke was seen rising from beyond the hills. No one knew whether it came from a cooking fire or whether it was a signal meant to be seen. That night, the tribe's elders gathered around the fire to make a decision. They did not want war. They had never wanted war. But if the strangers came to seize their water source, the one thing that kept every child and elder alive, they would have no choice but to fight. The following morning, Aruk and 5 skilled hunters set out toward the hills. They made no sound, moving carefully behind the cover of trees, communicating only through small hand signals they had used since childhood. From a distance, they spotted another small tribe. Children were playing near a cluster of huts. Women were gathering fruit from low branches. The men were repairing broken spears, tightening bindings with practiced hands. They looked just like the people of the Forest Tribe. They too laughed. They too worked. They too wanted to survive. They too wanted to protect their families. A question arose in Aruk's mind, one he had not expected to ask. Were they really enemies? Or were they simply another version of his own people, living on the other side of a hill neither had chosen to be born on? At that very moment, a young hunter from the other tribe noticed Aruk. Their eyes met. Neither stepped forward, neither threw a weapon. For a long moment, both simply stood there, two strangers separated by nothing more than distance and fear. Then, almost in the same breath, both hurried back to their own tribes. Before sunset, both tribes understood the same thing. They now knew of each other's existence, and once that knowledge exists, it cannot be unknown again. Then came the waiting. The night watches became even stricter. Mothers covered their children's mouths to silence their cries, afraid that even a whimper might carry across the still night air. The elders looked up at the sky and prayed, in whatever way people prayed back then, that dawn would arrive peacefully. But dawn was not peaceful. Just before sunrise, several unfamiliar warriors emerged from behind the trees. They did not attack immediately. Instead, they observed the situation from a distance, weighing, measuring, deciding. The Forest Tribe was ready. Both sides understood, without needing to say it aloud, that if war began here, neither would walk away a true victor. A spear flew through the air, then another. Within moments, everyone rushed behind the trees for cover, shouting, scrambling, hearts pounding louder than the noise around them. The battle did not last long. After only a few minutes of tension, both sides withdrew, because they knew that an injury meant no hunting. No hunting meant no food, and without food, the entire tribe, not just the wounded man, would suffer. A few days later, the river's water level dropped. Both tribes realized in their own separate ways that surviving in the same place, drinking from the same shrinking river, would become impossible. One night, the forest tribe decided to leave for a new valley. At first light, they gathered their few belongings, wrapped what little food they had left, and began their journey. Aruk looked back at the river one last time. He knew that perhaps the other tribe would soon stand there and think, "At last, the danger has passed." A thought crossed Aruk's mind, one that would stay with him far longer than he expected. Perhaps the greatest wars are not won on battlefields. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply avoiding unnecessary bloodshed and leading your people safely away to live another season. Thousands of years have passed since that morning by the river. Today, we no longer stand beside rivers holding spears. Yet the imprint of that ancient vigilance still lives within us. Quieter now, but no less present. We still separate people into us and them. We still feel pride for our own group, and at times we still become suspicious of strangers without any real reason at all. Times have changed. Our clothes have changed. Our weapons have changed. But the ancient story within us, the instinct to protect our families, to keep our people safe, to remain cautious in the face of the unknown, still lives deep inside the human mind, waiting quietly beneath the surface of every ordinary day. The two young hunters had looked into each other's eyes for only a few seconds, but those few seconds changed the future of both tribes. Aruk ran back toward the camp. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat covered his forehead. The moment Daruk looked at his face, he knew that something had happened. "They saw us," Aruk said between heavy breaths. Daruk did not answer right away. He simply looked up at the sky. Long years of experience had taught him that a real war does not begin with weapons. It begins with fear. Because fear makes the human imagination far greater and far more dangerous than reality ever is. Meanwhile, beyond the hills, the very same scene was unfolding in the other tribe. That tribe was called the River Tribe. Their young hunter, Noran, hurried back and said, "I saw a man. He was hiding and watching us." The elders of the tribe looked at one another. One of them said, "Then they know where we are." Another whispered, "Today they only watched us. Tomorrow they may come." Fear was born in both camps in exactly the same way, at exactly the same time. Neither tribe understood the other's language. Neither knew the other's true intentions. Yet both reached the very same conclusion. They had to be prepared. The next 3 days passed in a strange, uneasy way. There was no battle, there was no attack, but there was no peace either. Only a held breath that neither side wanted to release first. The people of the forest tribe watched smoke rising beyond the hills from a distance, trying to guess what it meant. The people of the river tribe found fresh footprints along the riverbank, trying to guess the same thing in return. Both sides realized the same simple, unsettling fact. The others were watching, yet neither wanted to strike first, because everyone understood that losing a single warrior meant far more than losing one person. He was a hunter. He was a father. He was the one who brought food home when the season turned hard. The death of one person could weaken the entire tribe for a whole year. One evening, Aruk asked his father, "If they haven't attacked us, then why are we so afraid?" His father remained silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Then he replied, "Because we don't know what they will do. The unknown is always the most frightening thing there is." In the river tribe, a small boy asked a similar question of his own mother. "Are they monsters?" His mother smiled gently and shook her head. "No." "Then why do we run away?" Holding her son close, she answered, "Because no one truly knows what a human being is capable of when they are trying to protect their family." On the morning of the 4th day, something happened that changed everything. 2 teenagers from the forest tribe had wandered further than usual while gathering fruit. Suddenly they saw an unfamiliar woman collecting water by the river. Both sides froze the moment they noticed each other. The woman, startled and afraid, ran back toward her tribe. The 2 boys, just as startled, ran back toward theirs. In reality, nothing at all had happened. No one had been threatened, no one had been harmed, but by the time the story made its way back through the camp, it had already changed shape. One of the boys said, "She screamed when she saw us." Another added, "Maybe she was calling for help." Within hours, the rumor had spread throughout the entire tribe. "They're watching us. They mean us harm." At the very same time, a different version of the story spread through the river tribe. 2 strange young men were following our women. The real event had been small, almost nothing. The rumor became something much larger, and fear, fed by rumor instead of fact, became greater still. That very night, both tribes tripled their guards. The fires were kept almost completely extinguished. The children were made to sleep in the very center of the camp, surrounded on every side. No one slept deeply, because everyone was waiting, listening, wondering, what if something happens tonight? The next morning, a thick blanket of fog rolled in and covered the forest, muffling every sound, hiding every shape beyond arm's reach. Aruk and 3 companions left to hunt anyway, because hungry children could not wait for clear skies. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a branch snapping somewhere in the distance. Everyone froze. A few moments later, Noran stepped out from behind the bushes. Once again, the two stood face to face. This was the closest they had ever been. They shared no common language. Not a single word passed between them, only the language of their eyes. Slowly, Aruk lowered his spear. For one fragile moment, it seemed that perhaps there would be no bloodshed today, that 2 young men might simply walk away from each other and let this fragile morning stay quiet. Then, without warning, a deer burst through the undergrowth. The bushes shook violently. One of the warriors standing behind Noran, unable to see clearly through the fog, thought the attack had begun. A spear flew through the air. It whistled past Aruk and buried itself deep in the trunk of a tree beside him. 1 second of silence. Then, everyone raised their weapons at once. Both sides believed in that same instant that the other side had struck first. No one paused to ask. No one tried to discover the truth. Within the fog came running footsteps, shouting voices, the sound of spears cutting through the mist, the crack of breaking branches underfoot. Yet the battle did not last long. Within only a few minutes, both sides withdrew into the gray haze, because neither knew how many enemies were hidden somewhere in the fog. The mist itself, formless and silent, had become their greatest enemy. That afternoon, Aruk returned to the forest tribe. There was only a small cut on his hand, already scabbing over. But something far greater had changed inside him. He had realized something he could not unlearn. Wars do not always begin with hatred. Very often they begin with a misunderstanding, a single wrong decision made in half a second by someone who could not see clearly, a single fear, mistaken for certainty. And once fear spreads like wildfire through a camp, the truth no longer matters to anyone. Daruk placed a hand on Aruk's shoulder and quietly said, "No one died today." He paused. But today, peace did. That very night, the elders of both tribes understood the same hard truth. Standing guard would no longer be enough. Now they had to make a real choice. Would they fight, truly fight, until one side could no longer stand? Or would they find a way for their children to live long enough to see another sunrise? Before sunrise the next morning, both tribes were ready. The men stood with spears in their hands, faces set, breath slow and controlled. The women had already led the children deep into the forest, where they would be safer, away from whatever was about to happen. A heavy silence hung over everything, as though the entire forest itself knew that something irreversible was about to take place. Daruk looked at everyone one last time and said, "Remember, we are not going to wage war. We are going to protect our families." His voice did not waver, but his eyes carried the weight of every choice that had led to this morning. On the other side of the river, the elder leader of the river tribe gave his warriors exactly the same instruction, word for word, without either man knowing it. Both tribes believed that their cause was just. Both believed, completely and sincerely, that the other side was the aggressor. That, perhaps, was the greatest tragedy of all. 2 peoples, mirror images of one another, each certain they alone were defending what was right. Slowly, the 2 groups approached the river from opposite banks, the same source of water, the same hope for survival, the same fear, wearing 2 different faces. From a distance, they saw one another clearly for the first time in daylight. No one spoke. No one stepped forward. Only the wind moved through the trees, indifferent to everything about to unfold beneath them. Suddenly, a small child, who had slipped away from his mother's hand for only a moment, lost his footing on a wet rock and fell into the river. In an instant, everyone froze. The child was being swept away by the current, arms flailing, small cries swallowed by the rushing water. His mother screamed in terror, but she could not reach him in time. The warriors of the 2 tribes stood, weapons raised, directly between her and the river. Then something happened that no one on either side could have imagined. Aruk threw down his spear and ran toward the river. From the opposite bank, Noran did exactly the same, dropping his own weapon without a second thought. Without hesitation, both men leaped into the rushing water. Fighting against the powerful current, arms burning, lungs straining, they reached the child together and carried him safely back to shore, each holding one side of the small, shaking body. The child was crying, but he was alive. Both tribes stood in complete silence watching the scene unfold on the riverbank. No one attacked, no one raised a spear. For the first time, both sides realized the same astonishing thing at once. The man they had believed to be their enemy had just saved one of their children, without a moment's hesitation, without asking which tribe the child belonged to. Slowly, Daruk lowered his spear to the ground. Across the water, the elder of the river tribe did the same. Neither understood the other's language. Yet both saw the same emotions reflected in each other's eyes: exhaustion, relief, loss, and a deep, sudden understanding of the true cost of everything they had almost done to one another. Daruk reached into his pouch and placed a piece of dried meat on the ground between them. The elder of the river tribe stepped forward and offered, in return, a container filled with fresh river water. That was their first peace agreement. No words were written, because none could be. No witnesses recorded it, because history had not yet learned how to remember. Only the quiet, fragile beginning of mutual trust, built on nothing more than two men jumping into a river without thinking. Over the following months, the two tribes hunted in separate territories. Careful, respectful, still cautious. They shared the river instead of fighting over it. Sometimes they saw one another from a distance while gathering food, but no one reached for a weapon anymore. The children grew up hearing two stories side by side. One story told of how, once upon a time, the two tribes had come dangerously close to war over nothing more than fear and rumor. But the other story, the one told more often, was that one day a stranger had saved the life of one of their own children without a moment's hesitation. Slowly, that second story became a legend, told around fires for generations after everyone who had lived it was gone. Many years later, the old chief Daruk passed away. Before his death, he called Aruk to his side and said, "Remember this, above everything else I have taught you. The strongest warrior is not the one who kills the most people. The strongest warrior is the one who knows when it is time to lay down his weapon." Aruk carried those words with him for the rest of his life, and he passed them on to his own children, who passed them on to theirs. Thousands of years have passed since that morning by the river. Today we no longer stand beside rivers holding spears. Our wars have changed shape entirely. Today we fight with words, with ideologies, with politics, with comments left beneath strangers' posts on social media, often about people we will never meet and never truly understand. Yet deep inside us, that ancient instinct still remains, quieter, but unmistakably present. We are still quick to divide people into us and them. Sometimes a single flag is enough, a single language, a single religion, or even just the name of a group we have never actually spoken to. But history, and nature itself, has taught us another lesson, one worth remembering every single day. Beyond every conflict stands another human being. They have a family too. They have fears too. They have dreams too, ordinary and unremarkable, just like ours. Perhaps they too simply want to survive, and to see their children reach another sunrise. Perhaps that is exactly why human beings have become both the most terrifying creatures on Earth and the most compassionate. These are the same hands that forged spears and weapons through every age, and these are the very same hands that reached into a rushing river to save the life of a complete stranger's child. Both possibilities have always existed within us, side by side, waiting to be chosen, and they still do, right now, today. Today, when you find yourself arguing with someone you do not know, when you begin to see a person with different beliefs as your enemy simply because they are unfamiliar, pause for just one moment and think. Perhaps it is that ancient survival instinct from thousands of years ago quietly speaking through you, mistaking a stranger for a threat the way Aruk's ancestors once did. But you possess another power as well, one your ancestors did not have the luxury of using so freely. A power even greater than fear itself. That power is the ability to choose. You can choose hatred, the old, familiar, instinctive path. Or you can choose understanding, the harder, newer, and far more human one. And perhaps the greatest victory in the entire history of human civilization was never won on any battlefield at all. Perhaps it came quietly, on the day when one human being first laid down their weapon, waded into a river, without knowing what waited on the other side and reached out a helping hand to another stranger for the very first time.